we're in an S-76 helicopter near Calabasas, California, with poor weather conditions similar to the day that Kobe Bryant's helicopter crashed into the mountains out here. And we're going to just go up in the air on his route of flight, general route of flight, not attempting to completely recreate it, but show kind of what the weather conditions actually were when this flight was taking place. So right now we're on the edge of Burbank's Class Charlie airspace, southeast of Burbank, and we're taking off here and gonna kind of show through their flight profile what they were experiencing, or make an attempt to. This is by no means a recreation of exactly what happened, but just maybe a little bit of insight on conditions, and particularly for me, not being a helicopter pilot and new to this VR kind of deal, it's really going to be immersive to me, feeling what it's like to be in these kind of weather conditions. For me specifically, I did my flight training right here in these hills, flying between Mojave and Burbank and Van Nuys and Camarillo, and then down towards Chino in Inland Empire. So this is kind of familiar to me as far as following the roads and the mountainous terrain that's in the area, but not in these weather conditions. So we're just at an interchange here. This would be near the, I'm assuming this is the 101 that's in front of me, that's headed east and west, and this is where they wanted to transition along, but they were actually told later to go north of Burbank. So we're gonna just take off here and make an attempt to kind of show what it's like. Currently at standard pressure, so I'm showing about 400 to 500 feet MSL, and just taking off, and you can see the 101. I believe this is the 101 right here in front of me, and their attempt was to kind of follow the 101, and they took off, and we're gonna follow the 101 up, and then getting closer to Burbank, they were actually told to follow the 5. So at this time they're climbing, you know, around 1,000 feet, but they're still climbing up. And completely forgot to get my gear up there. Now the gear's coming up. So they're in contact with the ground, you can see, but at least in this simulation, in our weather conditions, we're getting close to minimum conditions for flight. In fact, we're just below the VFR minimums required. So we're under 3 miles of visibility, and our ceiling here is about 1,500 feet.
For someone that doesn't know what VFR means, what does VFR and IFR mean?
So it refers to visual flight rules versus instrument flight rules. And where in visual flight, I'm operating by looking outside. I can see the horizon in front of me. I can see the terrain alongside of me, and I navigate by those visual waypoints from point A to point B, wherever I'm headed. And in IFR flight, it's just the opposite. I'm solely operating on my instruments in the cockpit here. So you can see I can still see outside. I can navigate visually for the most part, but as I approach this 1,500 foot altitude here, I'm gonna start to lose that visibility. So there's Burbank Airport off to that side. So now I'm north of Burbank and transitioning on the north side of Burbank, and right here at about 1,500 or 1,600 as my altitude tends to increase. Now you can still see there's terrain above me in the clouds, but I'm underneath it. And then all of a sudden we're in the whiteout, complete IMC conditions. And if you can already see my attitude and everything, I'm struggling to kind of to hold everything steady here. So at this point, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable, and I'm coming close to the red line of my helicopter here. So I'm going to descend below that and try to maintain VFR conditions. And at this point, I'd be transitioning from Burbank Tower over to Van Nuys Tower, which is over there in that direction, and maintaining about 1500. That's keeping me below the clouds and at a decent airspeed here. But I'm now on a special VFR clearance to transition through the Van Nuys area. And I'm right here about at that 1500 mark, which now I can see that the terrain is actually getting closer to me as I'm over rising terrain. And with this cockpit, I don't have the information in front of me to know exactly how far away from that terrain I am. So I'm just transitioning along the north side right now, and got the highway off to my right, which I believe is the 118. So I'm kind of along the 118 right here, and just passing up Van Nuys Airport off to my left, which I can't really see. So we're cruising along, and everything seems okay right now, but wow, that's starting to get close to my altitude. But I don't really have the ability to climb any higher, because now if I climb, I'm probably going to get into some IMC. So I think we're going to be right about here. And as I'm getting clear of their delta, I'm going to want to transition to the south to follow the 101. And that would mean making a turn off into this direction. Being careful not to go too high, because then I'm approaching that IFR layer, the IMC. So I'm turning now westbound or southwestbound, maintaining 1500, about 1500, and doing my best to continue navigating visually. But now, being unfamiliar with the area, I really don't know exactly where I am. I know I'm to the west of Van Nuys and to the west of some other visual points, but I'm in between the highways now, and so I don't know exactly where I'm at. This looks like a reservoir of some sort, and this highway, this might be the 101, but I'm not actually sure. Now, if that was, because ultimately I want to end up in Camarillo out here. I would end up going back westbound and northwestbound, as a matter of fact. But I'm actually, so that probably is the 101, and I don't want to cross that. I want to go back the opposite way and then follow this all the way to my destination. But now, wow, okay, so now the terrain is rising rapidly around me. And this already doesn't look good, because I can see some mountainous terrain in front of me, but I can't tell exactly where I'm at or where I need to make it to. So, okay, it looks like everything's kind of clear enough though. So it looks like I want to get a little bit more altitude and then follow this around to where I need to go. Follow this up through the mountains, and then headed back westbound, kind of, and up through here. So now it looks like I got, pretty decent cloud clearance, and all. But it's real interesting that right in this area was where Kobe's helicopter went down. And if you're unfamiliar with this, like I am, flying this low and flying fallen roads, this could easily get into a situation where you lose VFR conditions. But here in this case, I'm way above that altitude, and I'm still able to maintain VFR here. But that apparently wasn't the case on that day. So this is where I would want to play around with the settings, because for whatever reason, this cloud layer is really thick over here, but not where I am in particular. And then the point where I would want to actually hit. Can it zoom in? Oh, no, not that. Alright, yeah, and then let's assume that I'm doing all of this at once, and oops. I'm above VNE and I'm IMC. Let's not descend right now. Alright, well. It's quickly getting overloaded in the cockpit. So now I have no idea where I am. I'm naturally going to start slowing the aircraft down a little bit. And oh shoot, I have ground contact below me, but I cannot tell at all how high I am. Wow. And that's really scary, because I thought I was okay. I literally thought I was VFR, and then everything changed all of a sudden. So now I'm in this huge rush to get above terrain. Minimum safe in this quadrant, I know from flying here and looking here, it's like 3,500 feet, and I'm nowhere near that. So now we're still trying to climb above this stuff. And from the looks of the clouds and everything, it looks like I'm still fairly close to terrain. We're coming through 2,700 feet right now, still in the climb. Our airspeed has dropped significantly as we're trying to rapidly climb over the terrain here. And now that we're at 3,000 feet, we're climbing through 3,200 feet right now, and I'm kind of sweating actually. Now I'm purely in IMC. I have no more ground contact, but at least at this point, I'm pretty sure that I'm over the highest points of terrain in the area. And my current heading would suggest that I'm still generally in the direction of Camarillo, but now it's still a little misleading because as I transition north, I know that there are some extra mountains up here. So I am not hesitating to climb even higher. And at this point, now that I got the cloud tops in sight, I don't mind being VFR on top. So we're going to continue up to do that. Still IMC though, and I should be flying on instruments. So this thing does have a decent climb rate, but if you get in between canyons, there's no way that you're going to be able to climb out of there. So that was interesting. It definitely got me going for a while there. So now we're VFR on top. Now I can kind of relax a little bit because now I have a horizon again. But this is where I would get back to doing some planning, and even you can see right there that there's some mountains poking up through the clouds. I guarantee you over there to our east there's some stuff. see if I can. Because in this regime, you can't even pull up the GPS to punch in the waypoint that I want. Wow, see, are you right there? And as soon as you start doing stuff in the cockpit, this is when it gets really easy to be distracted. And there's just no way that I can even punch this stuff in on this GPS right now. You know, so I'd really have to be navigating by what I can see outside. No, I have no idea what that was. But what I could do at this point is continue basically westbound, and eventually I'm going to get into the next valley. And Camarillo is somewhere over there. But this feels a lot more comfortable. You know, at least I know that I'm above all the terrain in my area. And that I have a horizon, so I can clearly see what's in front of me and what's behind me. And I can quickly reorient and reference myself to that horizon, so I know if I'm level or nose up or nose down.
What's your theory on what?
It's pretty clear from a composite analysis, looking at the air traffic control transcript, the flight track, and the weather conditions of that day, that this helicopter was flying at a very low level, underneath what would normally be considered safe VFR altitude, and was doing so without some of the onboard equipment that would provide terrain collision avoidance. So in my opinion, it appears to be a situation of CFIT, a controlled flight into terrain, where just like what happened to me very moments ago, I was approaching some rapidly rising terrain and had no idea that it was there, because it wasn't on my GPS, and it wasn't my radar altimeter, my collision avoidance system didn't go off, it didn't alert me. And I don't know what hillside exactly Kobe's helicopter went into, but it's pretty easy for that to happen in a marginal VFR kind of condition. You go up a couple hundred feet too high into the clouds, and there's a mountain hiding behind there. I don't know if there was an AirMet Sierra out that day at that time, but that's one of the things that I always looked out for in my private pilot training. And even right now, I'm above the mountains, but these clouds are so thick that I can't see the mountains coming out of the clouds there. And this is one of those dangerous situations where it appears that you're VFR for a period of time, but it's very evident that if you do get in close proximity to a mountain just like this, it's already too late for you to figure out where you are and reorient yourself. So in my opinion, it's one of those unfortunate pilot errors and events where you had a perfectly good airplane and a perfectly good pilot in control, but the situational awareness wasn't there to prevent collision with terrain. So, and that's one of those things that happens just like this in the simulator. It doesn't seem very real, but you can easily go in and out of the clouds like this and lose visibility to the point where you can't see, and that rapidly rising terrain is right there, right underneath you. And so we don't have this problem so much in Alabama with rapidly rising terrain or mountainous terrain, but we do have towers, we do have other aircraft that are flying, and all of these things are obstacles that you have to avoid. They're potential collision hazards. So it's really important for student pilots and newer pilots to train for conditions like this, train for the worst case scenario where you don't have a horizon in front of you and you have to operate on reference of instruments, and you know what the air traffic control facility is in the area and can call them and request, you know, some of these pieces of this information that would help you basically help save your life in these situations. And now I'm turning to the south when I should have been headed westbound, headed northwest. I'm in the mountains. So yeah, completely disoriented. I know I'm descending though, so I know I've got to get out of this. And now I'm right here above the clouds. I don't think Kobe's aircraft made it this far on its flight, but it's easy to see why. And the further you go towards Camarillo, the worse these conditions get, because the terrain becomes even more mountainous until you get into the next valley over. So it's just a lot safer to be on top of this than it is in it. And that's why there are those VFR minimum cruising altitudes. I actually think I've flown through this pass right here. Either this one or one that's further to the west. But I've done the special flight rules, not special VFR, but special flight rules from Camarillo down to Compton and flew over LAX. And it takes you right through these mountains. And I remember my co-pilot, the guy that was flying with me, saying, "Oh man, I don't know if we're high enough to make it through there." And it's very misleading. So he could have thought that there was enough altitude to make it through, ran into some IMC unexpectedly, and then was not able to maintain collision avoidance, terrain collision avoidance. So, I gotta find Camarillo. There's no way to punch in KCMA on this GPS, so I guess you go back to map, wherever that may be. Where the heck am I? CMD, I can't see anything on this. VNY, I'm still headed that way, so it should be, or here. I don't know, I'm looking at IFR low and round. Yeah, where's this guy? Can this thing point to here? Oh. Okay. There's Fillmore, right? There's CMA. I already passed it then. Gee. So it's way down here. Yeah, that's about right. Alright, so we'll pick up this heading of, now we're basically headed due south. 4,500, 4,400. Maintain this, and we should end up in Camarillo one of these days. Which is that where he was headed? I thought that was where he was headed.
Yeah.
Could have been wrong. One of those things where if you're hugging terrain out here, even if you're not, it's kind of a dangerous proposition to fly anything below, if you're IFR and MEA or VFR, you know, anywhere around that minimum or that maximum elevation figure. So it's not the smartest thing to do. So now that we're above that obscuration layer, there's a lot better visibility up here. We're clear of clouds. We're in Class Golf airspace right now, but we've got Class Echo visibility, right? But as we descend and go down there, you got those low-lying clouds in the mountains, which is where it gets dangerous. Well, nice and fun up top. VFR on top, no problem whatsoever there. But this is going to be the tricky part, coming down into Camarillo. Now we're coming back down into that valley. We're hauling. You know, I'm moving, not paying attention to speed all that much, but pull it back just a little bit there. Get on the, still headed straight for CMA. So I didn't take the route that they took. It obviously just got a little uncomfortable for me to continue on that route, and I decided to climb up just because it felt safer. Now I don't remember what Camarillo's elevation is, but it's not very high. I do remember that much. I don't like this. We do 3,000. I don't see anything really mountainous around me, but now I know there's a valley here. Just don't know exactly where it starts and ends. I do know that once I get over the airport, we still got some distance to go here. Keep heading on this southerly heading. And I'm climbing because I don't like getting in these clouds. I know there's mountains around me, and I just would rather stay VFR through this till I get to my destination. And it is warm up here. When I say warm, I mean I'm warm from the stress of trying to navigate with a paper map, essentially. Alright, let's check our position here. I mean, we're getting there. Let's see here. Alright, we're chopping to it. So three miles out. Alright. Oh yeah. Almost already forgot about it. Like, if I slide this in without even... I wouldn't even care all that much. Alright, so we're going to reduce our forward velocity. Camarillo is like 2,900. I don't even remember what that thing is. That's freaky. Alright, slow it down, Craig. Slow it down. I've definitely passed up the airport now. Okay, alright, I got ground contact. Whew. Oh, it's starting to get a... Oh, shoot. Alright, that looks like the airport. I'm gonna slow it down now. I'm getting a gear alarm. Oh, no, I'm getting an outer marker alarm. I don't know why I'm getting that. I probably need to change my pants now. That was pretty intense. That was definitely a lot to do at one time. Well, this thing you can't change the views or anything.
Yeah, not in VR.
Yeah.
Woo. But you definitely got kind of a feel for what they were seeing.
Yeah, and that's scary.
Yeah.
That's very scary. Having gone through, I forget what pass that is, that Highway 14 takes through the mountains south, past Burbank, and gone through there at 4,500 and really felt like, wow, that's pretty low, especially around the mountains when the mountains are kind of towering on either side of you. And there was that day there was some mountain obscuration, not where we were, but there was a lot of mountaintops that you could not see because they were in the clouds. And having done that, and then thinking about being at 1,500 feet going through there, even around Van Nuys and Burbank, and then transitioning northwest towards Camarillo, yeah, that's a risky proposition even if you are following roads. So yeah, it's pretty intense. Like camping.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was fun. enough VR for the day. Enough sweating on my part for sure. So yeah, maybe we won't go flying today.
Yeah.
No. So and that's the difference, man. Mountainous terrain makes all the difference in the world. Because out here, I know I can fly at 2,000 feet, 1,500 feet, and go straight south of here, and like short of a tower being right there on my path, like without a chart or anything, probably not gonna hit anything. But man, I can't. He probably did that route a bunch of times. He did it at 1,500 feet, and it was like, oh, that's no problem.
Yeah.
And then that day, the weather conditions combined with his complacency, combined with the lack of instrumentation, or whatever was going on in the cockpit that may have disturbed him, or may have he may have been ignoring after having heard it so much. All of those things coming together are what the FAA talks about, what AOPA talks about, the Swiss cheese idea, that it's not just one thing going wrong, that it's more than one thing at a time. And it gets to a certain point where not even the most experienced pilot or air crew can recover from it. And you're looking at a guy who, helicopter instrument, commercial rated, had a lot of time, clearly was experienced to even an attempt a special VFR transition in that area. But one too many things were not in his favor that day.